Chapter 5. My Dad Got Booed at Ken. When I first got the call that my dad was going to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, I could hardly suppress my excitement over the phone. I let out a squeal of delight, and I'm sure the nice lady calling me heard it too. Thankfully, I managed to compose myself right after that, ironed out the details, and got right to work booking our flights. The amount of work it took to get my dad to Cannes was all finally worth it. Those sleepless nights, the exhaustion, the fights with my creative team, it was all validated with one simple phone call. My dad is going to Cannes. I rolled that sentence around in my mouth for a good minute. My dad is going to Cannes. This being my first time at the legendary film festival, I had a few things to learn before I hit the red carpet. First, you must wear a tux. I had to rent one for myself and my dad right away. Imagine how hard that was, since I didn't speak a lick of French. Luckily, Dad can change size depending on how much breath he holds, so we gave a very deep exhale, and we bought the smallest tux they had for the cheapest price. Way to go, Dad! We even got tickets to see some of the other world premieres at the festival. I could not wait. As a longtime fan of Cannes, this was a dream come true. On the night of our big debut, I drove Dad and myself down the theater aisle in my little baby blue motorbike with the sidecar attachment, and we nestled into our seats, ready for the show to start. Right away I could tell something was wrong. First, we saw the premiere of Jake's dad, and Jake's dad was awesome. He strolled confidently down the aisle, did a little bow, and proceeded to do a roodly toot on his fancy horn. He got the whole place bopping and grooving to his spectacular symphony. Jake was so excited and proud of his dad, he even joined in by yelling, "Can Dad!" over and over. The entire audience agreed, and only booed Jake's dad softly. Everyone booed with a tiny smile across their French lips, still jiving to the spicy hot ragtime of Jake's dad and his triumphant trumpet. Somebody gave birth, so they had to stop the show for 5 minutes. But after that, up came Patricia's dad. And if you thought Jake's dad was the life of the party, Patricia's dad was the party. You can probably read the coverage of Patricia's dad in The Hollywood Reporter and Variety, but their recaps hardly do it justice. The vibe in the actual theater was electric. Patricia's dad burst through the floorboards and proceeded with a sensual ribbon dance, which made me cry deeply. Immediately I thought of the time my family was so poor that we had to steal ribbons from Julian the fabric merchant just to tie our crumbling hut together. "Oh God!" I yelled, half in anguish at the memories, half in disbelief that anything could make me cry that hard again. I looked around, and it was clear from the tears streaming down everyone's faces that they too had many child-time memories of their own crumbling hut. The only one not crying, come to think of it, was Jake's dad, who continued playing his horn over the performance of Patricia's dad. This somehow was not insensitive of him. His fiery hot jazz complemented the icy cool moves, like a volcano in winter. We choked back our tears eventually, realizing that this was a metaphor for life. Though there may be cold times, we will always find the fire in us to dance. The ribbon dance received just 4 boos, a Cannes record. All 4 booers were placed in a box for their crimes. Patricia bellowed "Can Dad" with astonishing force, and the President of France agreed. They were ready to crown the fabulous ribbon man with a Palme d'Or, but the festival organizers had to quiet everyone down because there was one more stupid idiot dad to go through. They meant my dad. Chills ran through my blood. There was just no topping those last 2 dads, and everyone wanted to go home now. The stage had been set for pure failure. My dad turned to me, screamed in my ear, "Here goes nothing, kiddo! Be proud, starting right now!" and walked on stage in big, sweeping gaits, hunched low like a cartoon cowboy who's been riding a horse for 2 weeks. I slunk lower and lower in my seat, trying to hide my shame. I could tell the audience was ready to boo my special man into oblivion. The judges' booth, which consisted of Clive Owen, Appledy-App from the Black Eyed Peas, and France's most famous comedian, Gerard Depardieu, readied their booing cones. My dad smiled wide. He had no idea what was coming, as a hush fell over the audience. Usually, when a show is about to begin, there's at least someone giggling excitedly, or whispering, "I'm so happy to be at Cannes," or maybe a small boo, but the silence was deafening. Immediately, I knew they were preparing for the biggest boo of all time. The biggest boo for my dearest Pops. My dad went into his routine, squatting up and down in rhythmic fashion, joints squawking like a duck call every time he went down, and bleating like a child's party favor every time he went back up. His skull gave off a beam of light that projected a computer desktop display onto the curtains behind him, which showed an open iTunes window. But I forgot to renew our subscription, so though he kept trying to play the song he had queued up, My Dad Is Cool by Bruce Springsteen, all he got was an error message telling him to pay the subscription fee. He couldn't see it though, since the display was projected behind him, so he just kept cluelessly blinking his left eye, trying to play the song. All the while he was squatting and rising, squawking and bleeding. Everyone's eyes were wide open with rage. Jake's dad took off his hot jazz sunglasses, revealing a pair of eyes so red that it was haunting. Clive Owen continued staring at me, his lips glued to the blower of his hateful cone. Gerard Depardieu made a big show out of phoning his wife to tell her he loved her in case he died from all the booing. I can tell my poor dad is trying to work a tough room when he busts out his most desperate routines, and this night was no different. He turned off iTunes and proceeded with a short statement, telling the audience that killing his son Brian would be illegal. Everyone shook their heads, which made me worried that maybe it wasn't illegal in France. Clive Owen shook his head especially violently, looking at me with fresh fervor in his terrifying eyes. Whether it was illegal or not, he would taste the blood of a loser son. Then my dad launched right into his hoariest party trick, scooping up a completely perfect ice cream sundae for only me, and telling everyone else in the room they can't have any. This is a fantastically funny joke in my family, since my siblings all hated ice cream. They love to watch Dad fill me up with the most scrumptious scoops until my belly is ready to pop because they don't care to have any. But in public, the gag sinks like a lead balloon. People in the rest of the world can't get enough ice cream. Dad just... I love him, but he just doesn't get it. Sadly, it was another flat-out A+ sundae from Dad here, with a caramel creme drizzle and fresh almond compote to offset the smooth, fruity notes of the cherry-strawberry garnish combo. The texture, the flavor, the sheer visual delight of this incredible treat, all off the charts. And as he handed me my chilled dippin' spoon, the crowd could not have been more pissed. Normally, my dad makes a happy face with crushed almonds, but this iced cream's face was sad. It was his little way of telling me he was sorry for what was about to happen. "And none of you can have any," he said solemnly, eyes unable to meet the gaze of the audience, knowing the joke wasn't working. "That is all the iced creams I have for my hungry boy here." Jake's dad set it off with a blast of fury from his trumpet. What once was an instrument of joy had turned into a clarion call for war. The audience booed so hard the carpet started bunching up in great big ripples, the seats rattled off their screws and the walls started caving in. Clive Owen got his head stuck inside his booing cone and couldn't extract himself, looking like a dog recovering from foot surgery. He still screamed his boos so loudly from inside his cone that, legend says, if you walk to the Riviera, you can place a fine conch shell near to your ear and hear the Cliven screams faintly echoing inside. Having fully given up, my dad finally inhaled. After hours spent keeping his body small enough to fit into his rented tux, buttons came popping off, fabric tore, and his frown grew larger as he puffed himself back up to normal size. Unfortunately, as he increased in surface area, more of his sad body caught the wind from the hurricane-force booing. These blast-tacular boos lifted my dad off his feet and through the back wall, which was already crumbling. He smashed a perfect outline of his body through the concrete and rebar, tumbling further and further into the sky. I jumped onto my motorbike and I started the engine, tears forming in my eyes as I prepared to go catch him and get out of the country. But Appledy App was sitting in the sidecar, helmet and goggles already on. "Where to, ice cream boy?" he said, his voice dripping with angry sarcasm in that classic Appledy App style we know and love. "Definitely away from the direction my dad is flying in," I lied, taking another bite of my sundae like it was all no big deal. "Then forget it," he got out, tossing the goggles aside angrily. I couldn't believe I successfully fooled Appledy App, since within the Black Eyed Peas, he's known as the Trickster Pea. But I had no time to gloat over my luck. I hit the gas and tore off, with my crying liquid gushing down my cheeks. Also, Gerard Depardieu actually died. I thought that was just a lame comedian bit he was doing, but no, he actually totally died. My dad told me he was going to stop being my dad the next day, when we were licking our wounds with a celebratory trip to Disneyland. We were soaring over California when he told me. "You deserve a dad that can jazz it up with a clambering blowhorn one moment, and break your heart with the soulful scribble of a dribblin' ribbon the next," he told me, crying. "The juice is long gone from my dad game, sweet boy. I'm just a contraption, a chapter in your story." The ride finished. Finally, we had stopped soaring over California, the worst ride in history. As we touched ground again and undid our buckles, I nodded, knowing my dad had to leave me alone forever. "What do you think that chapter will be called, Dad?" He walked towards the exit, blazing with light. He turned around, bathed in the nearly blinding glow of the sun, and gave me one final smile.
"Call it, My Dad Got Booed at Cannes," he told me. "Begin the first paragraph by writing the following. When I first got the call that my dad was going to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, I could hardly suppress my excitement over the phone. I let out a squeal of delight, and I'm sure the nice lady calling me heard it too. Thankfully, I managed to compose myself right after that, ironed out the details, and got right to work booking our flights."
He winked and stepped into that unknowable white glow of the Wanderers. I stood transfixed in the Rides Theater as Bruce Springsteen played on the loudspeakers.